Good afternoon, magandang tanghali, and welcome to today's episode of My PI Dream. We are into episode 3 of our Starlink Satellite System. Today we're going to get into the techie side of the house. I believe a lot of people have been waiting. We're going to answer a bunch of questions that were in our comment section and on emails, and we're going to connect this whole system up to our home network using this Starlink provided Ethernet adapter. We'll do a box opening, we'll do an install, and we'll do some real-world testing. I think you're going to find today's episode to be very interesting out of the series that we've already started here at Villa Feliz. Well, anyway, let's go ahead and get today's episode started. So without further delay, let's get today's video underway. Now, this being our last box out of all the different accessories that we purchased with the Starlink system, we're going to go ahead and do a box opening. Again, on the inside, what we have is a Ethernet adapter. The Ethernet adapter allows you to be able to connect hardwire from your router, your Starlink router, to your home network. And here it is. It's very simple. It connects from the same wire that connects your antenna to your router. This is like goes right in between it. Here's your Ethernet connection on this end right here. And when you pull this section of the Ethernet adapter out, this is going to be for your connection. That's the in between your antenna and your router. So where your antenna used to connect into your router, you're going to connect the antenna wire here. And then what you're going to do, you're going to connect this into the bottom of the router itself. This is the in-between, and it accesses the Ethernet wires that are inside the router itself for you to be able to connect right here. Now, our router currently sits up here on our lanai, on our second floor here. Its main purpose in life right now during the testing is to provide internet connectivity to our pavilion. That's where we have a lot of gathering. We watch TV, we hook up our computers back there. It's a gathering point, and we want to make sure we have good internet back there. Now, this housing for this Generation 2 router differs from Generation 1. Generation 2, it is IP54 rated. And what does IP54 rated mean? It actually means that this is resistant to a reasonable amount of contaminants and dust. And it's also, you can feel safe if there's any spray of water from anywhere around the top, bottom, back, sides. You will not have any water penetration that goes inside. Now, you wouldn't want to do something like put a high pressure washer on this or immerse this inside any type of water, but it's actually made for outdoor use, which makes it different from the first generation router. Now what we're going to do, we're going to go ahead and connect up the Ethernet adapter. The Ethernet adapter is going to connect, like I said, between the cable that goes over to the antenna over here, and then it's going to connect to the router, and then we have an actual connection right here. We have a RJ45 port, and it goes through Cat6 throughout the entire house into a patch panel that I'm going to show you in just a little bit that will allow it to enter our home network. Now, something I wanted to mention while we're out here are these connectors here. These are similar to USB connectors here, but not 100% to the standard. This is proprietary connection from Starlink. This is a 20-pin connection where it looks almost like a USB-C, but more like one of the other types of USB connections that has the curves on the end of it. But this is 20. USB-C has 24 pins, and we'll do a breakout of what each one of these pins are, but it's mainly for the data, and it's also for the PoE that's going to go over to the antenna. So we're going to go ahead and put this between the antenna and the router, and then we're going to connect the back of this, which is the Ethernet connection. We're going to connect this to our home network. All right, now the hookup is all complete. I have the Ethernet connection, goes out of the back of the Ethernet adapter. It's going to our home network, and I'm going to show you that in just a second. I replugged everything back in. I unplugged it while I was doing all the connections. And now we're going to go inside and take a look at our home network. Now, before we go over and take a look at our patch panel, something I just want to talk about, normal installation. You would normally have the antenna outside. You would run the other end of the antenna cable. If we had it inside the house right here, this is where you would put your Starlink router, and that you would be done. Everything would be done. That's a very simple installation. And then you would have Wi-Fi. Your whole house would have Wi-Fi inside the house. Now, we have additional routers inside the house. We have a home network with VPNs. It's a little bit more complex than the standard user would have. So let's just take a look inside our house, what we have for our simple network that we have that's a little bit more complex than most people would have inside their house. We have a patch panel. Our patch panel goes to Ethernet RJ45 connectors throughout the house. It's hardwired, so anywhere inside the house in different rooms, you can plug in a hardwire to your computer or your device, like if you have a smart TV. You can plug it in on hardwire if you don't want to use Wi-Fi. And then all of these connect to a switch. We have a switch over here, and the output of the switch goes to our main router, our gateway, which is our PLDT fiber modem inside the house. So it puts everything is on the same network inside here. And when I say network, they are physically hardwired throughout the entire house. But we have multiple networks, and I'll explain that here in just a moment. Now, coming onto our house, this is PLDT. This is our internet service provider over fiber. This is what we have currently before we had our Starlink, but we're still running it. We can run both of them through all the same physical wires that we have inside here, but we're on different networks. Now, I just want to talk briefly about networks. This is not a Network 101 type of a video tutorial, but you have to have a little bit of familiarity if you have a situation like we have now with multiple networks inside a house. Now, for most people, when they install the Starlink, that is going to be the only network, so it's plug and play. You plug it in, you turn it on, you log in for the very first time and activate it, and you're good to go. You don't have anything to worry about. But here we have multiple networks. Now, with our multiple networks, we have a slight dilemma. And the dilemma is, normally, if you have multiple networks, they can't be the same IP. So if you have a network such as the Starlink, which is by default on 192.168, 1.0 network, with the router being 192.168, 1.1, then you can't have another router being on that same exact network unless you create things like a VLAN with some subnetting. You can manipulate that, but we can't do that here. And why? Because Starlink has locked down the ability to get inside the admin section and go and do configurations on your own. You might ask yourself, why did Starlink do that, where you can't get into the router like you would normally get in almost every other router that's commercially available? And I have a feeling it has to do with their ability to keep control. If you have any problems, just think about it. If somebody went in that really didn't know what they were doing and they messed up the configuration, and there was no one on the other side, like on the Starlink side, that could get inside and fix it because you basically severed that communication connection back and forth, then they would have no ability to be able to do troubleshooting with you. So I think what they've done, they made it very simple so that everybody, the common user, can hook it up. They can't get in, they can't meddle with things, and they can't break it really. So that's good and bad, but I actually like getting inside because there are things that I like to do on my home network and tailoring my network. Anyway, so what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to change, because our service internet provider, PLDT, is on the same exact network as Starlink. So it was very easy. So what I did was I went inside my PLDT router, because they let me get inside it, and I changed the whole network. So we are on a different network. So we don't have conflicts. Basically, if you have two networks that are on the same network, or two different routers, and they're going to compete with each other inside there because they're going to be trying to use the same IPs. Okay, well, that's enough on that side of the house. So what we're going to do is we are going to go ahead and we're going to start pointing things to the Starlink instead of PLDT, and we're going to do some testing on that network. Now, we have a connection for Ethernet underneath the bottom of our island here, so we can actually connect hardwire when we're working here if we want to in the kitchen. So we're connected now from hardwire that goes through the patch panel that hooks up to the switch, that hooks up to all the devices on the network, and we're connected into our laptop right here. So let's go ahead and set this up. Now that we have our physical connection done, we're connected to hardwire from the Starlink Satellite Antenna, upstairs through the router, through our switch inside our patch panel. It's going through the whole house, and we're connected via hardwire right here on our island in the kitchen to our laptop. And by the way, we're using a Mac. I have a MacBook here that we're using. So if you hear me using terminology like terminal window, that's identified for Mac. It's different, a little bit different for Windows, but it's the same thing that you're going to be doing on either operating system. So right now I have 3 windows open. I normally, for testing, I have a terminal window open. I'll have a network configuration window, and then when everything looks like it's working, I'll do a speed test, and eventually what we'll do is we'll do like a video test on a network. So you can see in my network window here, I have my network identified. The first thing we're going to test is PLDT to make sure we didn't interfere and we don't have any conflicts going between the 2 networks. So I manually type in, which is configure IPv4. I configure the network for PLDT. I am going to be 10.199. The network is 10.1. You can see the router itself. And then I'm going to go over to a terminal window and I'm going to ping it to see if I have any pings coming back. So, whoops, I actually put in the Starlink IP. So that shows me I'm not connected to the Starlink. So we'll go back. We want to go to 10.1, and you can see we're getting pings back from, and these are very good ping times coming back from the PLDT router. Okay, so we tested that. Let's go back over and change our network manually over to the .1 network, which is the Starlink. Now I'll apply. This will automatically go out and look for the Starlink, and we'll go back over to our ping window. And we'll change this from the PLDT routing to the Starlink. And you can see, okay, so we know that we are directly connected to Starlink. Next thing we want to do, let's go back over to our network, which is PLDT. And we're going to do a test of speed test. Let's go and see what we're getting here via PLDT hardwired. And as expected, we're getting really great results hardwired, because this is what should be the advertised from your service provider. Since you are hardwired, you're not going either over 2.4 or a 5 gigahertz network. We're doing hardwire. And that's great. We're getting 611. I'm on a 500 megabits network. And so we're doing really good there. So let's go ahead and change everything over to the Starlink. Starlink is on .1, and then we'll do another test on that. And we'll come over to the speed test and try hitting this first. And it will go out looking for, and it did. It found the SpaceX, and it's going through Quezon City, because that's probably where SpaceX and Starlink have their service office set up there. And it's about half of what I expected. I'm not really sure why right now. We'll do some more testing as we go along. And there you have it. So we know it's working. We know we are inside the house, anywhere inside the house on any physical connection, any RJ45 connector in the wall. We have connectivity to our Starlink system up on the lanai. Now my next test is to do just a video. We're going to go on to YouTube, again through the hardwire, connected up to Starlink on my laptop right here, and I'm just going to open up my own YouTube channel so that I can kind of get an idea of the resolution that's coming through here. I don't want to get any copyright strikes going through any other channel or network, news network or anything like that. So far so good. That looks pretty good. Again, this is going through our hard wire connected to the Starlink antenna up on the lanai. Alright, so we're doing real 4K high definition video right here, and this looks good. So the next test is we're going to go ahead and reconfigure one of our routers we have in the house that goes over a VPN back to the US. And what we'll do is we'll see how much we lose. I expect to lose a lot on it, but who knows? And we'll look at the real numbers. Okay, now our ASUS router that we have here in our living room, it is set up as a VPN client to connect back to our VPN server back in the US. So I went ahead and changed the WAN configuration. So the WAN configuration in the router, I was able to make a connection to our Starlink. And you can see under the WAN connection here, you can see it originally was DHCP. It would normally go out and assign an IP, but you want to change it so that it doesn't go flip-flop back between the two networks that we have. Remember, we have the PLDT and we have the Starlink. So I set it for a static IP, and then what I did on the WAN, I set it for .1, .2. .1 is Starlink. .1.1 is the Starlink router. So this logically would be the very next router in the link. So I normally go by the number so that it's very easy to understand. And then the default gateway, again, is the router, the Starlink router upstairs. And then the DNS server, I got set up inside there as the router upstairs. And I use Google for my secondary DNS server, which is 8.8.8.8. All right, let's go ahead and go and see if we can watch TV on the TV here inside the living room, going through our Starlink, going back to the US through our VPN's server back there. It's going to be a little bit slower than we would normally get if we didn't have the VPN server, but what this is a proof of concept. Let's see how it works. Now, I got to tell you, I'm really happy with this. This is very clear. This is high definition TV, and this is going through the ASUS router here. The ASUS router is configured as a VPN client. So basically what's happening, this is going through the Starlink, which is outside, going through a VPN tunnel back into the US. So it's got lots of different routes that it's going through, and we're still receiving very high quality video here in our living room. So I'm going to look at some of the data rates. It should be only really around 6 or 8 megabits per second going through this very slow route that I have going through here, and we'll check it out right now. We're just going to do 2 more tests. We're going to do a test going through the VPN and bypassing the VPN just straight through Starlink. So Starlink with VPN. And this is a personal server client VPN. It's very, very slow. It's not like your big robust VPNs like you would normally have with something like NordVPN. So we're going to do a test like that using speed test, and then we're going to shut off the VPN, and we'll see what the results are on that. But remember, you only need about 4 or 5 megabits per second to actually do video, which is what you're seeing when we just watched and tested it on our big screen TV. So let's go ahead. We're going to hit the speed test. Right now, we are on the VPN from across the room on our laptop, going to the ASUS router as a VPN client, going over Starlink, going routed through my VPN back in South Carolina. So let's see what the numbers are here. So not too shabby. I was expecting more like 8 megabits on the down. So we got 11.1 on the down, 3.34 on the up. Okay, so now what I'm going to do, I'm going to go in that same router that I'm using here, the ASUS router. I'm going to shut off the VPN. We're just going to go clear, and let's see what the numbers are going through Starlink without the VPN. Now I have turned off the VPN in the ASUS router, so we are bypassing it, and we're going straight from our laptop right here through the ASUS router with no VPN on, going through the Starlink. So let's go ahead and do a test on that. and we'll see what our data. I expect it to be much, much faster than the 11.1 on the down that we had coming from our residents back in the U.S. And you can see already we're over 90 megabits now. Now this is without, again, this is without the VPN, and this is wireless inside the house, connected through the whole network, through the switches, the hardwire, going through the Asus router here in the living room. So this is very respectable. If you were not someone who needed VPN and you are in the Philippines and you wanted Philippine content and you wanted internet and you wanted to stream and do everything, this is going to work for you right out of the box connected to your network. So this is a good test. Now before we close today's episode out, there are a few more things that I want to talk about. There are a few more techie things that I want to talk about and some pricing that I want to talk about. Let's start with the techie stuff. There was a big improvement that went from the generation 1 to generation 2 router. The generation 2 is the one that we have right now. Remember, we said the generation 2 is mainly for indoor and outdoor, where the generation 1 was basically set up for indoor. There are more type of waterproofing and things to prevent it from getting damaged in an outside environment, the Gen 2 that I'm talking about. Also on the Gen 2, as opposed to the Gen 1, the Gen 2 has three antennas. Three antennas. I have a picture of the antenna connections on the inside. It has an antenna connection 0, 1, and 2. The original had antenna connections 0, and let me see if I can find the picture. Had the antenna connection channel 0 and channel 2. The newer router also has a channel 1 antenna, so it has a little bit more capability. And basically what they say is the new antenna layout helps create more of a spatial diversity, giving you more area to be able to connect to. And actually does really good here on the back porch, the lanai of Villa Feliz, to the backyard. The other thing I wanted to talk about, let's see, in my notes, had to do with firmware. Now, normally you have the ability to update firmware yourself. Well, you don't have the ability to update the firmware yourself on this system right here. It does it automatically. When you're online, it will go inside your system. It will, when they have an update, and they will push the update. And they try to do the update at the most convenient time for them, and so it's not inconvenient for you, so you normally would not get interrupted. And that's something like 1 to 4 a.m. in the morning is when they would normally try to push the updates. And how can you tell what version of firmware you have inside? Well, you go in the Starlink app, you go into the Advanced tab, and you'll be able to see the firmware. Also, to find when a firmware update was pushed, if you go into the uptime, you can check that in the statistics, and if you see that your system was rebooted, it was probably rebooted for a firmware update. So you can check that also in the Starlink app as well. And I also want to talk about router configuration. You can't do much of a router configuration here like you can do, like I was saying earlier, that on other companies like Asus, you can do almost anything inside there. Change the power, change the channel that you want to be on. There's very few things that you can do on a Starlink router, other than basically naming the SID, the name of the network that you're on, and changing your username and password inside there, and the admin username and password. That's basically all that you can do inside there. Now, there is a configuration file. If you are kind of like a hacker and you get inside, you get into the Etsy folder inside there, and I believe it, I believe it is the Etsy /www/templates folder. There's a configuration file in there, but I don't think you can do anything with it. I think it looks like a standard, factory maintenance mode kind of a page inside there. Probably the fine folks at Starlink, they can get inside and they can do the things with it, but as far as I know, that you can't get into that page other than to view the template if you actually like secure shelled into the router yourself. Now finally for today, I just want to talk about a couple other things, and this has to do with the availability and types of antennas that Starlink ships with and some of the costs. Now there are two types of antennas that you're going to be able to get when you click on the buttons on the Starlink.com site when you're placing your order. It's going to be a standard system or it's going to be a high performance system. The standard system is what we have here, and it costs $599 US for the entire system, which it comprises the router, the antenna, and the cable. What you're going to get is your standard system, what we have been evaluating here. Now the next option you have on there is the high performance system. The high performance system goes for $2,500 US for the system, which is the antenna, the cabling, and the router. The antenna is just a little bit bigger. It is a high performance antenna, meaning that since it's a little bit bigger, it has more the ability to generate a higher data rate. And it's mainly meant for corporate users, also or businesses. Also, what it can do, it has some more features that make it a little bit more stable in some really bad environments, like if you were at the North Pole, or if you're in a place that has a lot of snow and you need something to be secured a little bit better. That's what that system is basically set up for. Also, on the high performance system, that it is bigger and it can have a bigger data rate, it also uses more electricity. So it's going to be pulling more wattage on there. So if power is a concern for you, you're probably going to want to stay away from that high performance system as well. As you can see, I'm going bananas over our new Starlink system. Those are bananas from our banana plants in the backyard. Well, anyway, I hope you got some good information from this. We are going to continue to do some monitoring of our system. We'll probably do a 30-day update. We'll do some big updates to let you know the performance. Oh, it's all about the performance. You can look at the numbers. Numbers might seem small, but if they're robust and they're strong and you don't have any problems with buffering, what does it matter? And that's what we're going to report on in the upcoming days and months and years with this system. Hopefully we'll have good things to report back to you. Anyway, if you are in the market for a great satellite system, I think this is one that should be seriously considered. Well, anyway, I hope you enjoyed today's episode, and if you did, please give me a thumbs up, please share, and if you have not subscribed, just click on the little MPID Dream heart in the bottom right hand side of your screen. You'll be subscribed, and if you ring that bell, you'll be notified the next time I upload a new video. So until such time, from right here in the very beautiful Philippines, you have a wonderful and blessed day. If you enjoyed today's episode and you would like to see more just like these, just click on one of the helpful links over to your right and you might be able to pick up on some good information on DIY projects, how to, or if you are interested in moving to the Philippines and building, you'll find answers there as well.